World of Warcraft is pulling the add-on plug, making gameplay more approachable. Prey scales the world according to the difficulty you select, and new information is coming out all the time. It's alpha season, baby, and World of Warcraft Midnight's deep dive clearly laid out what's going on with the next step in the World Soul Saga. And yeah, there's far more to this expansion than what we thought. Hello everybody, I am Jmulls, and it's time to zug.
But not the one you know.
Okay, first off, the deep dive was infinitely better than what they did at Gamescom. Hire that narrator and have them do every trailer from now on, because that voice was smooth, and it was just an enjoyable watch, and it was also dense with information. A lot of it kind of what we already knew and expected out of Midnight. However, they made clear a couple of details regarding Midnight that you kind of had to go spelunking for it in order to actually find out back at Gamescom. Let's start with the big one. Add-ons are no longer going to be able to take in information during battle from the API when we get to Midnight, and it may even be a little bit before then. Yeah, remember when they said at some point they were going to shut that kind of stuff off? It's happening with Midnight, if not before. While it may be earlier than some people anticipated, they are adding a few new UI changes to the game so that you retain a lot of that basic functionality that you got from add-ons, such as a damage meter, a way to manage your cooldowns, a boss timer feature called combat warnings, and also renovations and changes to the nameplate system to make it far more visibly clear and distinct when you actually need to pay attention to a spell and mob is casting. Look, let's face it, the basic nameplates in this game are absolutely god-awful at this, and I'm glad the basic game is now incorporating this functionality. Will it actually work and be sufficient day one out of the box? Possibly not, but that is the point of an alpha, so that over the course of testing, they're able to take in feedback and make changes according to said feedback to make it palatable and enjoyable when it's shipped live. Now, they're not on the best track record when it comes to stuff like this, looking at you, personal resource display, but I still think at the end of it all, this is a noble goal and a good direction for World of Warcraft to go in going into the future. They didn't really make it clear back at Gamescom, but Midnight is changing a lot when it comes to the way you're pressing buttons and the way you're interfacing with the game. One of their stated goals they just talked about in a blog post is that they want to make WoW's gameplay more approachable. That means class changes pretty much across the board to make things and what your rotation should be far more clear and also focused instead of having a bunch of filler stuff or impediments to an accessible and understandable gameplay flow for your classes. Some people will hear that and go, oh god, they're making everything stupid, aren't they? And I mean, like, possibly, sure, but like, we need to see more. And look, I'll be the first one to say that if you need a bunch of add-ons to actually properly play your class and spec, then I think the class and spec is poorly designed. Again, it depends on the execution, but I appreciate the overall stated goal here for Blizzard. And if these changes can work in tandem with their new UI implementation, then it's possible that World of Warcraft becomes far more approachable for a new audience and also the existing audience that it already has. I mean, come on. I know some of you out there may be big pumpers yourself, but we've all been in those groups with people that are shockingly bad at the game, where you just take a step back and go, how does this even happen? World of Warcraft can be a very, very, very dense experience, and it can be hard to peer behind the curtain to find out what you're actually supposed to do. I don't think that means that they should necessarily make everything one button, but I do think it's fair to say that for quite a few specs in this game, there's just way too much clutter or needless complexity that doesn't add to the overall enjoyment of that spec. But also, people love WoW for the gameplay. It has always been a gameplay-focused and forward experience. And if they go too far with this, there is a real fear that I can see a lot of people having that it could undermine that basic enjoyable gameplay loop many people get out of World of Warcraft. But I do think this is a risk worth taking. We don't want them to go to the other extreme, but we're on an extreme right now as is. Hopefully they find themselves somewhere in the middle here.
But not the one you know.
Blizzard are so bad at advertising their game, oh my god. So the prey mechanic, right? Remember how they sold this thing back at Gamescom? Where it's like, oh, you're going to take a bounty, and when you do overworld content, you'll have the chance to run into that bounty, and after a couple of bouts with that guy, you'll have a big climactic fight with him, beat him, get some rewards. There's a couple difficulty levels, right? It kind of sounded like if you get any gear, you're just gonna roll over it. Well, they went into more detail here, and it sounds way better than what they said at Gamescom. Almost said BlizzCon, if only. What Prey actually is a world modifier. Maybe the deep dive just miscategorized it, but the way that it was presented there was that when you pick the bounty, you know, your prey, you also pick the difficulty level for that prey. And it scales the world accordingly, not just the mark you're going after. So if you pick Nightmare mode, the highest difficulty, well then the world's also Nightmare and you have various affixes imposed on you. This is one of the things I've been harping on World of Warcraft for the longest time. The world feeling so bland and shockingly simple and easy to where there's no interesting, difficult encounters in the overworld that's not just like a world boss that's just a lag fiesta, but something like this where you can choose to opt into the system, and so long as they structure the rewards correctly for this, can go a long way to satiating this craving that I have had for interesting overworld content. Over the course of the War Within, they've tried to go in this direction as well, and I think they've somewhat succeeded in that regard. But a lot of that content is just kind of non-combat oriented. If they can actually get combat stuff online in the overworld to where it's actually engaging, thumbs up from me. And now I understand the trepidation, I understand the worry and the concern. Well, what if it's just still too easy even on Nightmare mode? Look, let's be fair here. If you're like Mythic Geared, I'm not expecting anything to really be a challenge for you at any point here, but they did talk about one of the affixes that can be imposed upon you at like higher difficulty levels for Prey. Remember that one mechanic in Horrific Visions where you have this like echo version of yourself following you? Well, here, if it catches up to you, it just does lethal damage. And the fact they're willing to go that extra step and say, you know what, this will just straight up kill you, makes me think, oh, this might actually be balanced worth a dang. I might actually have to use more than 2 brain cells when I'm engaging in content on Nightmare difficulty in the Prey mode. So the way they sold Prey was that you just fight some jabroni in the overworld and get some rewards for it, but what it actually is a modifier for the overall game world, in addition to going after and pursuing a marked target. That sounds way better and has way much more potential, if that's even English, than how this system initially was sold. Thumbs up for me. I want to get into the alpha, please, so I can check it out for myself, because I think this has so much more potential than I think some people are letting on, especially if they nail the rewards, because some of them look pretty cool.
But not the one you know.
Okay, so there's another hub area. One, the way the deep dive kind of presented the story was that some dark stuff's going to happen. To be determined, right? But there's another whole location here called the Arcantina. We did see this on the roadmap for the alpha, but we now actually know what it is. It's a tavern where both a Horde and Alliance can go in and get some RP going if that's your cup of tea, or you can engage in the actual content there. It's essentially a hidey hole, a place to escape from the horrors of the world and everything going on with the Void, and just relax with a drink by the fire or with friends. But while that sounds like RP stuff, which is not everyone's cup of tea, there is actual content here. It's a quest hub to where NPCs may gather here that you may know. They showed off Gammon as one of them, and they may have a quest for you to go out into the world in pursuit of a relic or some tale from the distant past to learn more about the world or whatnot. You know that RPG feel where, or like in every like fantasy anime ever, they always get a bunch of quests at the tavern or at the guild? It's kind of like that, but in World of Warcraft. To be determined when it comes to the actual quality of these quests, but I think it's an interesting idea and a good excuse just to have random NPCs come back into the picture and send us off to go partake in the story. It really does seem as if World of Warcraft wants to double down on its in-game storytelling. I think the mechanisms to which it actually tells a story were really set in stone and solidified in the War Within, but they still had to get better at characterization and dialogue. If they're able to take that final step and also really lean into telling engaging stories in the game with Midnight, this could be a massive feature for the game and something that is very memorable. Again, not going to be for everyone. Absolutely, but no feature is. If they can knock this out of the park, this could be a really cool little hub area to get new quests. By the way, I just want to point something out. This is a me thing, right? Blizzard, from the bottom of my heart, throw any amount of money at David Shaughnessy that you can. He needs to do more stuff with World of Warcraft.
Fight against the surge of the Void's attack by restoring Parhelion's defenses, commanding an artillery of light, ducking into pocket dimensions, and putting down Gladius Slanna, a Dominar who uses summoned Voidwalkers as weapons against your stand.
His voiceover in the deep dive was a 10 out of 10. It made it so much more enjoyable to watch, and he conveyed the information in a very enjoyable and engaging manner. And I think that is something that, just looking back at Gamescom, was something that you guys struggled with. Having more deep dives and Q&As in the future is something that I personally would recommend. He just brought a great gravitas to the situation, which is something that I do think World of Warcraft needs more of. The presentation needs to be just good. It needs to feel like fantasy. It needs to feel epic. Oh, and by the way, I love the idea of the Arator quests. I love the idea that part of the leveling experience is not just go do a zone story, it's the idea of, hey, let's just go and tell a story with this named NPC and go wherever we think this story needs to go. I love that idea. I love the fact we're going back to previous zones. Just stick the landing. For those who don't know, the leveling experience of Midnight's going to be different from the War Within. We start off with the Eversong Woods, we do that story, and then we have a chance to pick which zone we want to go to next. We can go to Harandir, which is the homeland of the Haranir, or Harandar. We can go to Zulaman, guess who lives there? Or we can do the Arator quests, which will take us back to the old world into previous locations, as we follow Arator on his own little quest line in his quest to become an even better paladin and understand the light. We go to places like Blackrock Mountain, we go to places like the Plague Lands, and he's also following in the footsteps of his father and learning his legacy, the legacy of Turalian and what his parents have done. This has a chance to be a really good and interesting storyline. Just stick the freaking landing place.
But not the one you know.
Midnight is seemingly way more than what it was presented to be back at Gamescom. It's taking that core gameplay loop of the War Within, absolutely, but it is seemingly trying to double down on storytelling and trying to overall shift how World of Warcraft treats itself as a video game, making itself more approachable, streamlining the new play experience, actually having a cohesive one, reduce the importance of third-party modifications to the game to get a somewhat decent gameplay experience. Bake that into the experience baseline. And by the way, in the Q&A, Ian did go into the idea that, hey, we're going to prevent add-ons from getting that combat data, but the way that add-ons present that data, that customization is still up to people to be able to modify with add-ons. So if you don't like Blizzard's solutions in-game visually, chances are you will be able to modify them, at least with add-ons. I think this sounds good. I think it's a healthy direction for the game, and I'm glad they're pulling this ripcord. So thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. And while you're down there, leave a comment with your own thoughts, your opinions on this deep dive, the Q&A. What do you think of Midnight? What is exciting you? What is maybe disappointing you? I'd love to hear your thoughts and hear your opinions and hear your perspectives. Stay safe. Have a great day. Go play some video games if you can. And as always, I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again!